Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo antaha pravishya mama vacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akhila shakti daraswadamna anyamshta hastacharana shravanatvagaadin प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यम् लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to session 9 of Ishavasya Upanishad. So, what have we done so far? As we know, there are 18 verses in Isha Upanishad, which, as you know, is also called Mantropanishad, samhitopanishad, Kanva Upanishad, yagniya Mantropanishad. So, it's got various synonyms. As long as we remember, it is called Isha Upanishad because it starts with Om Ishavasyam Yidang Sarvam Yatkincha Jagatyam Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bunjitaha Magradaha Kasya Swiddanam Kuruvanneve Iha Kuru Karmani Jijiji Vishet Shatang Samaha Evam Twayi Na Anyato Asti Na Karma Lipyate Nare Asurya Namate Lokaha Andena Tamasa Avrutaha तांष्ट प्रेत्य अभिगच्छन्ति एके च आत्महनो जनाः अनेजदेकं मनसो जवीहो नैनद्देवाः आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत् तद्दावतो अन्यानत्येति तिष्ठत् अस्मिन् अपो मातरिष्वा ददाति तत् एजति तत् न एजति तत् दूरे तत् अन्तिके तद् अन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्य बाह्यतः यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येव अभूत् अनुपश्यतः सर्वभूतेषु च आत्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्ष्यते यस्मिन् सर्वाणि भूतानि आत्मन्येव विजानतः तत्र को मोहः क शोकः एकत्वम् अनुपश्यतः सपर्यगात् शुक्रम् अकायम् अव्रणम् अस्नाविरम् शुद्धम अपापविद्धम कबीर मनीषी परिभूः स्वयंभूः याता तत्यतो अर्थान् व्यददात् शाश्वतिभ्यः समाभ्यः. So these are the 8 verses that we have been dealing with over the last 3 months, I think now. So last week we looked at Sapariyagat, Shukram, Akayam, Avranam, Asnaviram, Shuddham, Apapaviddham. We saw the first half of the 8th verse, which I told you is in Jagati Chandas. Yeah, so let us think about Rishi, Devata and Chandas. So who are all the Rishis? Svayambu, Manu, Dadichi, Yagnavalkya, Kanva Rishi and all the Acharyas who have given us the meanings of the Upanishad. The Devata here is the Yajnanamaka Paramatma. The Chandas of this Upanishad is, there are 3 Chandas, Anushtup, Trishtub and Jagati. So this is a unique verse. So far it's been either Anushtup or Trishtub. This particular verse, the 8th verse, is in Jagati Chandas, which has traditionally got 48 syllables, but we also said that this particular mantra has got 50 syllables, so 48 plus 2. So if you are a purist, you would call this as Swarat Jagati Chandas is the Chandas for this. Okay. So, what did we understand? What is the overall structure of the Isha Upanishad? Always worth reminding ourselves so that we can get in context as to what's going on here. Although it is only 18 mantras, it is full of philosophical significance. Yeah. So, the first few mantras, we looked at the nature of the knower of Brahman. That is the first 2 verses. Then we understood what happens to the haters of Brahman. Atma Hano Janaha. And then we understood from Svayambu Manu's perspective, how is he doing Upasana of Brahman? And that is where we are, 8 verses. Now, following today's class, the next few sessions will look at what are the consequences of the wrong Upasana. Now, this is very, very important in philosophy in general. It is not enough just to know what is the potential truth in inverted comma, or what is the correct knowledge in inverted commas. But it is equally important to also have the knowledge of what is wrong knowledge. So unless you know fully what the wrong knowledge is, you will not be able to appreciate and understand what the correct knowledge is. So we need to spend a few sessions, I think, thinking about this very, very important verses, 6 verses that discuss the consequences of the wrong upasana. And the final set of 4 mantras, they talk about when Svayambu Manu is having sakshatkara, he is actually seeing Yagnanamaka Paramatma, and how is he seeing this Yagnanama Paramatma is the last 4 verses. So you can almost divide this into Kanda 1, Kanda 2, Kanda 3, and Kanda 4. That's 4 parts that forms the overall structure of Isha Upanishad. So what was the previous verse that we did? Sapariyagat. Shukram, Akayam, Avranam, Asnaviram, Shuddham, Apapa Viddam. So this is what we did last time. So we understood what Pariyagat means. Saha. Saha means that person who has read the Shastras, who has had some knowledge. So that person, Pariyagat. Pariyagat we understood as Pari Agat. Agat means to go. To go means to know. Pari means Paritaha, Paripurna. So as per individual soul's capacity, we all have a grasp or the understanding of this Paramatma. So that is what it means. Saha Pariyagat. And then our Guru, Svayambu Manu here placed some very, very important words there, and that are and of course, as you know, is of great philosophical significance. He said, Shukram, Akayam, Avranam, Asnaviram. So these are all the attributes he has given to Paramatma, the Supreme Brahman. When he is, contemplating, when he is doing the upasana of this Brahman, he is doing upasana as this Brahman is Shukram, Akayam, Avranam, Asnaviram. So last week I told you that when we are looking at the Upanishads, of course, we look for the Sutra, the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra. We also look at the Gita. So these form the Prasthanatrayas. But then if you remember, we also did something about Matarishva. Here, Svayambhu Manu said, Tasmin Apo Matarishva Dadati. He said, this Brahman is unknowable for mundane jivas like us, and he can be known, and the messenger who can also take all our karmas, and also the messenger who can actually give us the knowledge of this Paramatma, Svayambhu Manu said, that is Matarishva. And then I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we looked at this Balikta Sukta, which, as you know, is the first Rigveda Mandala, 141st Sukta called Pranagni Sukta. And in that, there was the first 5 verses that is called as the Balikta Sukta. And in that, the etymology of who Matarishva is actually very clearly given. And the etymology of Matarishva is what? A Shapta Shivasu Matrushu Matarishva. So you can go back and look at and think about those verses. The reason why I am saying all this is A Sapta Shivasu Matrusu. So who is this Matarishva? This Matarishva is that entity that is constantly thinking and is constantly, engrossed himself in these 7 scriptures. Okay, so that is the foundational Hindu scriptures. So I'm going to pause for a minute and get you guys to think about what are the primary 7 Hindu scriptures. If somebody on the street who is not the practitioner of a Sanatana Dharma asks you, so what is the Hindu scriptures? How are you going to answer to that person? So who wants to take this up?
There are the 7 scriptures, the 4 Vedas, Pancharatra, Ramayana, and Mahabharata.
Wonderful. So those are the 7 scriptures, and anything else that concurs with these 7 are also agamas, right? Rigadya Bharatam Chaiva, Pancharatra Matakilam, Mula Ramayanam Chaiva, Puranam Cha Yetadatmakam. The next line there in Skanda, in Brahmanda Purana is Puranam cha etadatmakam. So all the Puranas that concur with these 7 are also Agamas. So what I'm trying to get here is, when we are studying the Upanishads, we should refrain from looking at them in isolation. We should always combine, collate information from all other primary Hindu scriptures and then understand what is the language of the Vedas. Because Puranas, for example, they elaborate the Apaurushya Veda and they give you an explanation in many places. And that's what Acharya has done in all his works, is cite the Puranas so that we understand what is the meaning of these words. So we did that last week. So what is Shukram? Shukram, so where is the evidence for this? Varaha Purana. Okay. So the etymology of every word that Svayambu or Manu has used in this mantra, the evidence is already out there in Varaha Purana. So it is very convenient for us because we don't have to make our own assumptions with regards to what these words actually mean. Varaha Purana actually gives us a great deal of information around this. Okay. So how many Puranas are there, and which particular type of Purana is Varaha Purana? Anybody wants to take that? What are the primary Puranas? So there are 18 primary Puranas. So it is not a surprise that Isha Upanishad has got 18 mantras and there are also 18 Puranas. And we have done all these, isn't it? The significance of number 18 in Vedic philosophy. So Varaha Purana is a Satvika Purana and it's a very important Purana. And again, there are no surprises why we are looking at Varaha Purana, because in the very first class, we were looking at the background to Isha Upanishad. And if you remember the background to Isha Upanishad, what was going on in the background? The Earth's orbit was being taken out by Varaha. And then Paramatma in his Varaha, by Hiranyaksha, was taking the Earth away from the orbit. And Varaha Rupa Paramatma puts the Earth back to its orbit, and he does it twice, isn't it? One is in Svayambu Manvantara and the other one is in the Vaivashvata Manvantara. So Varaha is very much linked with this Svayambu Manu and Svayambu Manvantara. Yeah, so no surprises that Varaha Purana also talks about all this. The other Purana, of course, talks a lot about Isha Upanishad, or the background to Svayambhu Manu is. Who wants to take that quick rapid quiz? Which is the other Purana that talks about Svayambhu Manu and his story?
Bhagavata Purana.
Wonderful, Pratibhaji. Thank you very much. So Bhagavata Purana, so the 2 Puranas are important. So in Varaha Purana, Shukram means Shukram tat shoka rahityad. Shoka means no sorrow. Okay. Akayam. Akayam lingavarjanad. Akayam means, last week you looked at Akayam. Kayam means linga sharira. Akayam means no linga sharira. So this Paramatma never had any material entanglement. That literally is the meaning. So very clear from Varaha Purana. Akayam linga varjanad. Avranam nitya purnataha. Yeah. Avranam, we said Avranam means something that is omnipresent, something that is akhanda, something that is partless. So those are all the ideas of Avranam, and Varaha tells you very clearly, Avranam nitya purnataha. Asnaviram stula dehasya rahityat asnaviram udahrutam. Clear statement from Varaha Purana. So asnavira means it can be muscles, it can be nerves, etc. So these are all the gross coverings of the body, right? The gross body has got all this blood, muscles, nerves, bones, bone marrow, and all that. So stula dehasya rahityad asnaviram udahrutam. So these were all the verses that we saw last week. Saparyagat shukram akayam avranam asnaviram shuddham apapa viddam. Okay, so I am doing my revision, and I never stop reading the Gita. So if I finish 18 chapters and again I go back and read it again and again. So this one verse came to my attention when I was doing this particular verse. So who wants to take this? Chapter 2:20. Anybody wants to recite that?
I can read it, Madhu.
Yeah, go for it.
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचि नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वत अयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
Beautiful, Devalji. Thank you so much for that. So this is an interesting verse. This, as you know, comes in Katha Upanishad as well. And we have done this verse with a few slight modifications. Katha Upanishad, where Yama actually says this to Nachiketa, this verse. And Krishna adopts that verse from Apaurusha Veda to teach a concept to our Arjuna. Yeah. So in Gita Tatparya, for example, Acharya will take the first two verses implying Brahman and the last two verses implying the Jivas. So that particular verse actually kind of gives you similar ideas as to what we did last week. So Najayate Mriyate va kadachit na ayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyaha. So this Brahman, he is unborn, he is deathless, and he both in the past, present, and the future, he is always like this. Okay. Whereas the Jiva, the soul is also Ajaha, he is also unborn, he is also deathless. Shashvata there means he is eternally dependent on this Brahman. So that relationship is eternal and Shashvata. I am Puranaha. Puranaha there means that this Jiva has got this covering and this bodies. So that is the only difference there between Brahman and Jiva, in the sense that Jiva, of course, is atomic. Brahman is Avranam. But the Jiva is always having Linga Sharira and gross bodies, okay? And he is finite, and he is limited, and he is full of sorrow. So contrasted with what our Svayambu has described as this Brahmanas, we, on the other hand, we are full of sorrow. We always had Linga Sharira. We are finite and limited, and we acquire bodies after bodies and rotate around the 8.4 million species that Bhagavatam talked to us about. So think about the Gita verses, think about the Varaha Purana here to understand what is the philosophy that Svayambu Manu is teaching us here. Okay. So now we make our pravesha to the second half of the verse 8, which is super interesting. So now the question here for folks like us is, if this Brahman is completely without any external equipments, he completely has no material coverings, one may ask, how can this Brahman who is bodiless create this universe? Okay, so let's think about this potter. This potter, this poor guy who's sitting here, he is using a clod of clay. He's put this on this wheel, and he's rotating the wheel, and then he's making all these pots. Okay, so for this fellow to make this pot, he needs a hand, he needs to sit, he needs to get all these external material things, and then he needs to create. Yeah, but definitely he needs some hands and legs to do it. So he needs some kind of embodiment, isn't it? For us, that is clear. Unless we have our bodies, we can't do anything. Yeah. So does he not need a body? How is he able to do this? To create a pot, an embodied soul such as a potter is required. But Svayambhu Manu is saying this fellow doesn't have anything. He doesn't have Linga Sharira. He doesn't have Sukshma Sharira. He doesn't have Stula Sharira. So then the question is, if that is the case, how can this person create this stupendous universe? Okay, that is the next question that we ask, because this creation of the universe is a constant theme in the Upanishads. Okay, and I'll come to that in the subsequent slides as to why our Upanishads constantly talk about creation. Any Upanishad you see, there will be a topic about creation. I have not seen an Upanishad that does not describe or talk about creation. And I'll tell you why, because this verse gives you the answer. Kavir, Manishihi, Paribuhu, Svayambuhu, Yata Tatyato Arthan, Vyadatat, Shashvatibhyaha, Samabhyaha. And Swayambhu Manu in his Upasana says, this Brahman does not have material body, but he creates the universe because he is Kavir, Manishihi, Paribuhu, Swayambhuhu. What type of universe does he create? Yata tatyato arthan vyadatat shashvatibhyaha samabhyaha. These are really, really important verses of the Upanishads that inform us of deep philosophies. Okay, so what is it that he is talking about? So let's look at individual words that are coming up here. Kavi. Who is a Kavi? So we all know in our mundane languages, Kavi is a poet, right? So that is not what the Vedic language is. Kavi, Varaha Purana describes Kavi as Sarvajnat Kavir iti eva shabdyate. Kavi means an intelligent fellow. Yes, if there is a poet and he needs to make some noise, make some sounds, and that turns out to be a poem, he needs to be a knowledgeable person and he needs to know what he is talking about. Yeah, so that is a colloquial understanding of who a Kavi is. But from a Vedic perspective, Kavi means Sarvajnat Kavir iti eva shabdyate. The omniscient being is called Kavi, the seer, the knower, or the seer of all, the wise, the omniscient is literally the meaning of Kavi. Look at Mundaka Upanishad. It gives a beautiful explanation here. Yaha sarvajnaha sarvavid yasya jnanamayam tapaha. Yaha sarvajnaha. This Brahman is sarvajnaha. Sarvavid. He knows everything. He is omniscient, is what Mundaka Upanishad talks about this. So this is a very key verse of the Mundaka Upanishad, Sarvajnaha. That Sarvajnaha is Kavi. And that is what Varaha Purana says, Sarvajnat Kaviriti eva Shabdyataha. Okay. Now, the next question I want to just introduce here is, when you say somebody is omniscient or somebody knows everything, okay, so you need to think about some philosophy there. And I want to today and tomorrow, there'll be some hardcore philosophical discussions. Let's see how it goes. So when I say somebody is omniscient, okay, so there are some basic things that we need to grasp here. If there is a knower, so that is, let's say, for example, it's you and me, we are the knowers. And if there is a knower, this knower needs to know something. So there must be an object of knowledge. Okay? And there has to be a contact between the knower and the knowable object. When that contact happens, knowledge comes to us. Knowledge is generated. So that is the relationship between the knower, the known, and the knowledge. Pramatru, prameya, pramana. Okay, so that is the Sanskrit jargon for this. You need to have a pramatru. There must be something prameya that needs to be known. And then you get pramana or knowledge. So the three links are very important in most world philosophies and most schools of Vedanta. Except one school that thinks that knowledge can be an isolated entity without a known and a knower. Okay, that's a little bit absurd argument that there can be something called knowledge that can exist without a knower and without something that needs to be known. Okay, so think about that problem. We can deal with it in the next class. So why am I saying that? Because when Svayambu or Manu says Kavihi, and it has got a great philosophical significance because he's saying this person is Sarvajna. But then for mundane people like you and me, how are we going to even grasp and understand the concept of Sarvajna? How are we going to understand this? Yeah. How can we understand this being who is omniscient? How can we understand it? There has to be some example, right? Some kind of an anumana or an inference that we can use for us to grasp it. And that is why Vedavyasa put the second sutra there. First one was what? Atato Brahma Jignasa. And the second sutra was what? Janmadhyasya yataha. He who is the creator, etc. of the universe is Brahman. Brahma Shabdashta Vishnaveva Janmadhyasya yataha. Why? Because this universe, this stupendous, huge universe, if somebody has to create this universe, this fellow who creates this universe, first, he should have a prior knowledge as to how he is going to create. He should have a plan and put everything and make everything in order and make this intricate, most complex universe. So he has to do all this, isn't it? That means he needs to have a prior knowledge with regards to how he is going to do. So the only example that we can use is creatorship of Paramatma to understand why he is omniscient. And that is why that creatorship becomes very important in Upanishad philosophy. Yeah. So now how did that creation come about? So we have done all this. So here I have a quick quiz here. So in creation, which we have done, I think 3 years ago now. So I'm going to test your memory here. So when creation starts, let's say that the pralaya is coming to an end. The last 1/8 of pralaya, Shri Tattva is saying, Paramatma, we are all getting bored. Why don't you start the creation again? And then Paramatma says, okay, let's do the creation. So how does this creation start? Can we have a think about this? How did this creation come about according to Vedas? I've got the answers there. If anybody wants to do this.
Say Om Atatu, Atatu. The Lord says, and then the creation starts.
Okay, very good, Pratibha ji. Okay, that's good. Let's keep going with that. So when again, Om Atato Brahma Jignasa, the very first sutra is highly significant because Atataha, and that again gives you a hint that our Vedas say that this Brahman, he says Om Atataha, Om Ata Ataha, first, second, and the third words, and then the universe starts when Om is recited. Then, of course, he goes on and says other things, Ata Ataha. But when he says Om, that vibration, what does it do? It creates in that Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas that are all in that equilibrium, they are all in that equipoise state. This sound vibration creates a ripple. And that ripple then initiates the creation, and then the mixing up of everything else happens, right? So here there is a very, very key concept that we need to understand. That Om, that Brahman recites first. What happens? We have done that again. It becomes the Vyahriti. Then that becomes the Gayatri. Then that becomes the Purusha Shukta. Then that becomes the Vedas. Then it becomes all the sounds, including the sounds that we use when we converse in English. So they've all come from this Om when Brahman has said. Okay. So the first thing we need to understand there is, in the creation, there are two things, isn't it? There is something called the Namatmaka Prapancha, the world of names. And then there is something called the Rupatmaka Prapancha, the world of forms. Okay. The first thing that comes in creation is Namatmaka Prapancha, because Brahman says Om first. Whereas the Rupatmaka Prapancha comes later with the 9 levels of creation that Srimad Bhagavatam talks about, where you have the Pindanda that is formed, and then, you have the Brahmanda that is formed, and then the Pindanda, then the Jivas acquire a body, etc. And then, of course, all the material things in the universe. So what does our Paramatma do? He not only brings this Namatmaka Prapancha and Rupatmaka, but he links every object in the universe with a name. Okay. So that linking is also a part of creation. So this is very important. The reason why I say that is, you can say somebody is omniscient only when you know that this person who is the creator, he simultaneously knows about all the Rupatmaka Prapancha, and he simultaneously knows instantaneously all the Namatmaka Prapancha. That is, he knows all the objects, their names, he knows all the Vedas, and in fact, the Upanishads tell us this Brahman is reciting all of the infinite Vedas simultaneously. Okay, so those are all the ideas. So why I am saying this is, when you understand the term Kavi, and when you understand what omniscience means, it is an extremely deep concept in Sanatana Dharma. In Vedic philosophy, it takes great significance. Okay. So now here you need to understand, because I'm going to come to this in a few slides from now, something called Artha. So who is going to tell me what Artha means in your language? What does Artha mean?
Meaning?
Meaning is one, Sudarshan. Yes, Deval?
Essence.
Essence. Okay. So in Sanskrit, Artha means objects. Okay.
Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha is also there.
Yeah. Dharma, Artha. Artha means objects. Yeah. You acquire objects, right? So that thing is called Artha, means objects, basically. Thank you, Pratibha ji, for bringing that Dharma. Yeah, we got a friend who has raised hands. Manjari Sharachandra, go for it.
I thought that artha means desires.
So thank you, Saraji. Welcome to our forum. So artha, so dharma, artha, kama. So you have those among the purusharthas, you have dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So kama is the desires, whereas the artha is the objects. So you have a desire to acquire an object, but you do it properly using dharma. Yeah. So that is how you link all the three. Yeah. So artha is objects from the Vedic philosophy. Sudarshan is right. As the language has evolved, the meanings have also evolved. So in other languages, artha means meanings. It can also mean essence, but primarily in Vedas, artha means objects of the universe. So these are the gross objects of the universe. For us, because we are so stupid, some objects of the universe becomes very important for us. So we spend our whole lives getting up in the morning at 8 o'clock and working until 9 o'clock at night because we want to collect some arthas of the Brahmanda. Okay? So that is our sorry plight. But hold on to that idea of artha. Okay? So much to talk about kavi. Yeah. Sarvajnat kavir iti eva shabdyate. Now, here is another beautiful thing. So, let's look at some verses in Bhagavatam or Gita or even in the Vedas that actually talk about this kavi as Brahman. Okay? So, who wants to take up 8, 9? And if we have a colleague who also wants to do the very first verse of Bhagavatam, so that will be interesting for us to think about who this kavi is. So, who wants to do the 8, 9, please? Pragnesh, go for G. You might have muted. Have you muted Pragnesh?
Yes, sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Kavim Puranam Anushasitar Manoraniyam Sabud Svetat Sarvasya Dhata Chantarupa Maditya Varna Tabasa Parastat.
Beautiful. Thank you, Pragnesh. So, Gita 8, 9, Krishna says Kavim, Puranam. So, I am Kavi, very omniscient being. Srimad Bhagavatam, the very first verse. Who wants to take that one? The very popular one. Okay, no worries. I'll do that. Yeah. Janmadhyasya yato anvayat itaratashterta ashwar itara arteshva bignahaswarat tene brahma hridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsuraya. So the very first verse in Srimad Bhagavatam also talks about this Chaturmukha Brahma, where Brahman gave him the knowledge. Paramatma gave him the knowledge. Tena brahma hridaya adikavaye. Look at this Rig Veda mantra and you will all be very familiar. Second mandala. Gananam tva ganapatihim havamahe kavim kavinam upamashravastamam jeshtarajam brahmanam brahmanaspata anashrunvan utibihi sida sadhanam. This Mahaganapati, that verse that many of our Purohits who come home or in the temple, they recite this. I don't know in what spirit they recite this. Is this invocation of the Ganesha, or is this the invocation of the Mahaganapati? So from a pure Vedic philosophy, that Ganapati is the Pati of all the Ganas. So what are all the Ganas? Ganas are all the group of the material world and the group of all the names and letters. These are all the Ganas, and of course all the Jivas are Ganas. This Brahman is the Pati of all this. That is why he is called Ganapati. He is the Mahaganapati. So that is the Paramamukhya Vritti. When I recite this verse, I am thinking about this Brahman, Vishnu first, and then comes Ganesha. Yeah. So who is this Vishnu? Kavim Kavinam. He is the Kavis of all the Kavis. He is the super omniscient being, is how Rig Veda celebrates. Okay, so I hope you find this interesting when we pick up these words from other scriptures. So this Paramatma, the Svayambu Manu is celebrating, who is right in front of him as Yajnanamaka Paramatma, is called Kavim Kavihi in Rig Veda. In Gita, he is the Anadi Kavi. He is the eternal Kavi. And in Bhagavatam, he is called Adi Kavi. Adi Kavi means this Chaturmukha is the first soul that comes out in creation. And that first soul is very, very exalted. So in certain schools of Vedanta, Brahma and Vayu, they go together. So they are the Rujus, as we call them. So Chaturmukha Brahma and Vayus are the Adi Kavaye. They are the first beings that come out from Brahman during creation. And these guys are also called Adi Kavi. And again, it is no surprise that our Guru Svayambu says, Tasmin apo matarishva dadati. And I've told you, I've given you enough evidence from Balikta Sukta where that matarishva is the Vayu of Balikta Sukta of the Rig Veda. So Adi Kavaye is our Chaturmukha, whereas Kavim Kavi and Kavi is our Paramatma. Okay, so I hope you find all these links interesting, because that makes fascinating study of the scriptures and makes it far more interesting and linking it up with various other verses. So what does he say next? And that is that particular verse is even more fascinating. So he says, first, what did he say? You are Kavi. So when I say Kavi, you understand he is Jnana Maya. He is Jnana Maya. So when you look at this verse, if he is bodiless and he is able to create, the answer there is he doesn't have a material body, but his body is full of jnana and ananda. So jnanananda maya is his body, which is non-material. And with his non-material body and with his achintya adbhuta shakti, he is able to initiate the creation. So that is what Svayambu Manu is getting at here. Okay. So this Kavi is Manishihi. Okay, so now we need to think about what does that Manishihi actually means. Okay, so can anybody tell us in which verse this word manas came? So I'll go back to the very first verse. So there is a verse here where manas comes. Yeah. So here, where is that verse? Anybody wants to search for this verse here where manas comes across?
It's the fourth one, yeah. The top
Very
line.
good. Anejadekam manaso javiyaha. So when he talks about this Brahman, he says, he is so fast, he is so amazing that even Manas is trying to reach him, but he is faster than the mind. Yeah. So that is the idea that we have to go to the internal evidence, fourth verse, and then link it up here. Because when Svayambu Manu says Manishi, so what does Manishi mean? Manas plus Isha is Manishi. The ruler of the mind is Manishi. Okay? Or the controller of Manas and intelligence. Brahma ettal I put. Because Varaha Purana, so we have done this, right? When we looked at that Manaso Javiyaha, we looked at all the Abhimani Devatas of the mind. Okay. So anybody wants to talk to us about what are all the Abhimanis of the mind that we spoke about in the fourth verse? And I've got it here as a figure in the lower panel in a box. So who wants to tell us all the Abhimani Devatas of the mind, please? Garuda, Sesha, Rudra. Garuda, Sesha, Rudra. Thank you very much, Prahalad ji. So they are the key ones. And of course, there are so many other, Abhimani Devatas of the mind. So we can look at Rudra, Rudra's consort, Parvati, Indra, Chandra, and then then we have Chaturmukha Brahma. So Rudra looks after the Ahankara component of the mind. Chaturmukha Brahma for the Mahat component, that is the Chitta component of the mind. Then Lakshmi or Mula Prakriti, who is of course Abhimani of Shri, Bhu and Durga, is Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, but for the Anandamaya Kosha, the Chetana aspect, she is the Abhimani. Chaturmukha for Chitta, and then Ahankara Tattva is Rudra. So you build it up. So when you look at this, all the Abhimani Devatas, he is the Isha. That is what the verse is saying. This Brahman or Vishnu, who is not reachable because he is so fast, these guys, these Chandra, Indra, Parvati, Rudra, Chaturmukha, Lakshmi herself still does not know all the great qualities of Vishnu, says our scriptures. Yeah. So this guy, these chaps cannot reach him? Because not only because he's so infinite and Purna, but at the same time, he is also the controller of that. So that is also another idea that you need to understand. That is what Svayambu Manu says here. When previously he says Manosho Javiyaha, here he says Manishi. He is a Manishi because he is the controller. So yes, Rudra is the controller. Prahalad ji is absolutely right. And you need to worship Rudra before you go anywhere. Okay? If folks don't do that, it is their problem. But my humble request is, if you want to approach the scriptures, please pray to Shiva first. Please pray to Rudra and say, please give me a mind that will help me focus on to the scriptures. Yeah, so it is very important. So, but there are all the other deities that the Vedic pantheon is discussed in our Shastras. So when he says he is Manishi, basically he's talking about Sarvottamatva. Yeah, and that is what he's going to come next. When he has said Manishihi, so what does Varaha Purana say? Brahmadi Sarvam Manasam Prakrutya Manaso Apicha Ishatrutvan Manishihi. So very, very clear from Varaha Purana. And thankfully, we have done this already before. With regards to the fourth verse, understanding what are all the Mano Abhimanis and how this Brahman or Yagnanamaka Paramatma is the Manishi. He is the controller of all these. Okay? That is why he then says he is Paribuhu. He is Kavir, Manishihi, he is Paribuhu. Okay. Paribuhu is a very interesting word. So you can split it in two ways. Paritaha Bhavati. Bhavati means exist. Paritaha means everywhere. Okay. So that one word is omnipresent, but we have had that idea already, Abranam and all that, we have understood omnipresent. So we should look for, is there another thing that Svayambu Manu is thinking about? And the answer is yes. There Paribuhu means Pari Bhavati. Pari means Para. Para means Vara. So Para means that which is high, supremely high. Vara also means that which is very high. Avara means that which is low. So when I say Avatara, Ava means low. Avatara means the supreme comes down. That is why it's called Avatara. Whereas when I say Para Brahman, Para means the supreme Brahman. Yeah. So Para and Vara are synonyms in Sanskrit. So when you look at it, Paribhavati, Paribuhu means Paribhavati. What does Varaha Purana says? Saha Paribuhu Sarvato Varaha. Okay, very easy. Sarvato Varaha means Sarvottama. He is the highest. So let us not forget 15:18 of Gita. Gita 15:18. So who wants to recite that? Rakesh, go for it.
Yatsvaksharam atitoham aksharaadapi chottama atosmi loke vede cha prathita purusottamah.
Brilliant. And did anybody else, Pratibha Acharji also unmuted, or if anybody else wants to recite, please go for it. Okay, no. So that's a very important verse. So Yasmat Ksharam Atito Aham Aksharad Api Cha Uttamaha Ato Asmin Loke Vede Cha Pratitaha Purushottamaha. That Purushottamaha is the Paribuhu, Paribhavati. Sa Paribuhu Sarvato Varaha. So it's the same ideas of Gita that comes here. So Kavir Manishihi Paribuhu. Then there is a very interesting word, Svayambu. Okay, so there are some temples where they say this is a Swayambu whatever, something that has spontaneously come, Swayambu. Okay, in some temples you would have known. Yeah, Shobhaji.
Namaskaram. Parjanya is also a Manobhimani Devata, right?
Yeah, you're right. So you can Parjanya, not Parjanya, Prajapati. So there are, so I think the way to look at this, Shobhaji, is you have Chandra, right? Chandra. So what rank is Chandra in Vedic pantheon?
12th.
12th. Beautiful. So he is the 12th rank. So 12th rank. So the Mano Abhimanis actually start from the 12th rank. So if you go down from the 12th rank all the way up to number 2, and of course, number 1 is also controlling. So everybody will be involved in the controlling the Manas
20 is Parjanya.
Sorry?
Number 20 is Parjanya.
Yeah. Okay. So when you look at the gradation, you start from number 12 and you come down, and you will see all the guys that I've discussed will all have some component of controlling the manas component of us. Okay. So let's move on. So where are we? Yes, Svayambu. So we are looking at Svayambu. So Kavir, Mani, remember, just coming back, Svayambu is doing Upasana of Brahman, and he's saying you are bodiless, material bodiless, but you're creating the universe because you're Kavi, you're Manishi, you're Paribuhu. And then he says Svayambu. Okay. So Svayambu is a important word. What is Svayambu actually means? So let's etymology, right? Without etymology, there is no Shastra Vichara. Yeah. Swa plus Yam plus Bu. Swayambuhu. Swa. What does Swa mean? There is one very important sutra of Badarayana. Dibva Yad Atanam Swashabdat Om. Yeah. So there is that verse in sutra, you can check this out. Whereas Acharya very beautifully in Tattva Sankhyanā says, Swatantram aswatantram cha dvividam tattvamishyate. Swatantro Bhagavan Vishnuhu. So Swa stands for Swatantram. Okay? Swa means Swatantram. Yam can mean so many things. Niyamana is one easy way of looking at yam. Niyamana, controlling. That one who is Swatantra, and he controls everybody, but nobody is there to control him. Okay, he is independent. Okay? In fact, the definition of what Swatantram is actually given by Jayatirtha. Swarupa, Pramiti, Pravriti, Lakshana, Satta Traividye Para Anapeksham Swatantram Tad Apeksham Aswatantram. So this is the perfect example of what is independence. When you say your Paramatma is independent being, what does that actually mean? Okay. What that means is, for this guy's his existence, his ability to act, and his ability to become an objecthood of knowledge, everything is not dependent on another entity. It is self. It is self-dependent. So that is what is called independent. Whereas all others, starting from Shri Tattva to all of us, are all dependent in one form or the other for our existence, for our various things that we do, and for our objecthood of knowledge. So Satta, Pramiti, and Pravriti are very important concepts of the Vedic philosophy. So when I say Swatantram, that Swa stands for Swatantram. Yam stands for controllership. Sada, Ananya, Ashrayatvacha, Svayambuhu, Parikirtitaha. Okay. Swatantra is that principle which does not depend on any other principle for its essential nature and its power of knowing or becoming known, or the power to act, plus Yam plus Bu. Okay. That is what is Svayambuhu is. Okay. So in the Paramamukya Vritti, or in the primary philosophy, there is only one Svayambuhu, and that is Brahman or Paramatma, and Acharya has established that Brahma Shabdashta Vishnaveva. So at least from the Vaishnava tradition of philosophy, that Vishnu Tattva is the Svayambuhu. He is the Paribuhu. He is the Manishihi. He is the Kavihi. Okay, so that is how the philosophy progresses. So the next question is, so what does this chap actually do? So this is the most important aspect. I thought I'll deal in all detail today, but we are running out of time. Probably we have another 10-15 minutes to deal with this verse. Let us see if we can make some progress. So this person, remember the question there was, if he is Akayam Asnaviram, how can he, without any bodies, how can he create this universe? Further, the first line answers that this fellow is Jnananandamaya, that is his body, and with his Achintya Shakti, he creates. And he creates because that is his Satya Sankalpa. He is an independent being, and he decides that let me create, and the creation happens. He thinks and it happens. So akamayat bahusyam prajayeti. Taittiriya Upanishad talks about this. He thinks and it happens. Okay, because he is Jnananandamaya, he is omniscient. Next is very important question that Svayambu Manu says. So you're saying this bodily person who is Jnananandamaya, he creates. What does he create? What on earth does he create? Okay, and what is the ontological status of his creation? So that is very, very, very important for many schools of Vedanta, realistic schools of Vedanta. This particular verse is how shall I put it? That is the answer. Yeah, there can be no ifs and buts about it, about the nature of this creation and the nature of this material universe. What is Svayambu Manu saying? What is the nature of the universe that this Brahman is creating? Is this an illusion? Is this a mithya? Or actually it does not exist? Or what is it? Yata tatyato arthan vyadadat shashvatibhyaha samabhyaha. Okay, so that is the answer that Svayambhu Manu gives. This creation done by this Brahman, who is Jnananandamaya, he creates a universe. And what is that universe's nature? How does he create? What are the rules of engagement here? Yata tatyataha. Yeah. Varaha Purana. Look at this. Sasatyam Jagat. Yetadruk. Nityameva pravahataha. That is the answer to this verse that Varaha actually tells with regards to what Svayambhu Manu is getting at. So what am I getting at? So Yata Tatyataha Anyan Arthan, sorry. Yata Tatyato Arthan. So that is why I asked you that question actually, what does Artha mean? Artha means objects. Okay. So Svayambhu Manu says this Paramatma creates the universe of objects, things, Arthan. How does it create? So we are in this current kalpa, right? We are in this current universe. This is not the first time this universe has come into being, according to Vedic philosophy. Some folks may think it is the universe is created only once and then it is destroyed once. What is problematic with this is, why did he decide to create the universe once and then destroy it? And then what is the role of him afterwards? I don't know what the answer is, but that is a question at least certain Vedic philosophers ask. But in Sanatana Dharma, these arthans, these various infinite objects that all have names linked to it, this namatmaka, rupatmaka, prapancha, how is it happening? It's happening in eternal cycles. Yata tatyataha arthan. So this Brahman is creating this universe, yata tatyato arthan. What does that mean? Yata tatyato. In its full and proper sense, really and truly, and not as an illusion. That is the Svayambhu Manu's prayer here, that you are creating a universe because with your Achintya Shakti, and you're creating a real universe, but that universe, the rules are always there. Yeah, say, for example, in Rig Veda, 10th Mandala, you know this famous verse, Surya Chandra Matho Data Yata Purvam Akalpayat. When I say Yata Tatyato, it is exactly the same as Data Yata Purvam Akalpayat. That means how the universe was in the previous Kalpa is the same way it is now, and it will be the same universe in the next Kalpa. So the cycles of creation, you and me may not be there. Yeah, so we may be doing such wrong deeds that we will be sitting in Brahman's womb, not coming out in the next creation to do our sadhanas. We may not, but some of us may. But the general principles in which the universe is created remains the same. Okay, and not only that, this is yatartha creation. So there is two words, yatartha and ayatartha. Yatartha means true. Ayatartha means no untrue. Okay, so here Svayambhu says this universe that he creates in eternal cycles is a true creation. Yata tatyato arthan. Look at Bhagavatam. That also says the same thing. Yat idanim tat agre cha paschad api etad idrusham. So just of how the creation is in this cycle, the same it was in the previous, and it is going to be in the future. Look at Gita 15:1, beautiful verse. So we'll get somebody to recite and remind us of 15:1. So who wants to go for this? There are a lot of resident experts here. Devalji, go for it.
ऊर्ध्वमूलम् अधः शाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्यं वेद स वेदवित्.
Fantastic, Devalji. So look at that verse. This universe, that particular verse talks about this universe as Ashwatha, right? And there are at least 12 different meanings for that Ashwatha, and we have done all that before. So the origin of this Ashwatha is Urdhva Moolam, Urdhvo Vishnuhu, Vajasniva Vasu. So that is all Taittiriya Aranyaka statements of who this Urdhva is. And Taittiriya Aranyaka says Urdhvo Vishnuhu. Okay. Urdhva Moolam Adaha Shakam. This universe, how is that? Ashwatam. Okay. Although it is constantly changing, it is avyayam. It is indestructible. Yeah. So that is what is meant by Nityameva Pravahataha. It is constantly moving this universe. It may be changing every instant, but the universe is in eternal cycles. It happens, it goes, it happens, then it goes, and that cycle is eternal, and that is Shashwata. It never changes, that cycle, although the material things change constantly. Okay, so that is Avyayam that has been discussed there. That Avyayam is the same. Data yata purvam akalpayat yata tatyato artam. Look at Vyasa Smriti. Vishwam satyam vashe vishnoho nityameva pravahataha. Nityameva pravahataha. This universe, which is Vishwam, is Satyam. He is under Vishnu's control. Vashe Vishnoho Nityameva pravahataha. It is happening eternal cycles. It is like a river that is flowing constantly. The water molecules are constantly moving, but the river is constantly flowing. That is what the universe is. Okay. And of course, the modern view of the universe is also changing. And I've just put this one from Penrose, Prof. Penrose from Oxford, where the view now is conformal cyclical cosmology. Okay. The Big Bang was not the beginning of the universe, but merely a single stage in an eternal cycle of creation and recreation. Okay. So that is what the physics, cosmology also moving in that direction. And our Rishi, of course, Kanva Rishi was able to see this of what Svayambu Manu in Svayambu Manvantara, which is 2 billion years ago, our Vedas say that this happened. And this discussion was going on 2 billion years ago between Svayambu Manu and Yagna, and Kanva Rishi has seen this. Okay, so these are all ancient knowledge, but now we are trying to find this and re-explain this with fancy terms like conformal cyclical cosmology. But actually it is yata tatyato artan. It is data yata purvam akalpayat. Yat idanim tadagre cha paschadapi etad idrusham. Ashwattam prahuravyayam. Nityameva pravahataha. Okay. So then he says, I'll finish this today. I'm determined to finish this verse. So, Vyadadat Shashvatibhyaha Samabhyaha. So this is what? Why is this constant? It is eternal cycles. Swayambhu Manu qualifies that. Shashvatibhyaha means this creation has been happening from Anadikala. And Samabhyaha means it will happen for Anantakala in the future. It has happened for Anadikala in the past, and it will happen for Anantakala in the future. Anadi Ananta Kaleshu Pravaha Yeka Prakarataha is the explanation of Varaha Purana for this particular verse. When Swayambhu Manu says Yata Tatyato Artan Vyadadat Shashvatibhyah Samabhyaha. Okay. So these are all summary slides for this line. So from a Svayambhu Manu's perspective, I am not interested in what others think. We are doing Ishavasya Upanishad. So in the Ishavasya Upanishad, what is Svayambhu Manu saying about Brahman and his created universe? And he is very clearly stating here the reality of the created universe. Okay, so here is the contextual relevance. If his Manvantara is an illusion or a mithya, Why would he want to save it? It's a simple question. It's not a complicated question when you look at the Manvantara. If for Svayambu or Manu, who is such an exalted jiva, and if he thinks his Svayambu, his Manvantara is an illusion or a mithya, actually does not exist, why is he going to go about and talk about you are yata, tatya, arthan, vyadada, shashvati? Doesn't make sense. If he and Yagna are the same Nirguna Brahman, where is the need to pray and all the fuss? Okay? I think we need to look at these attentions. My focus and my intention here is, look at the verses, understand the philosophy as the Upanishad is telling us, not having preconceived ideas and seeing some ideas in the Upanishad. That is not what our Acharya say. That is not what Kanva Rishi has said. You need to look at this. Okay? So again, as I said, Srujate Bhagavan Purushottamaha Satyam. Yeah, this world is Satya according to Varaha Purana, according to Svayambu Manu. Look at Srimad Bhagavatam, very first verse. Of course, we understood Janmadhyasya Yataha, right? That is the definition of Brahman. And we have also done this very beautiful verse of Jayatirtha saying, Janmadhyasya Yataha iti Bhagavata Sutrakarena Jagat Udayadi Nimitta Karanatvam Parasya Brahmano Lakshanam Abhihitam Nacha Jagat Satyatamantanena Tadvastavam Sambhavati. Period. Okay. If Vedavyasa has given a definition that this Brahman is the creator of the universe, then by definition that creation has to be real. You don't say your art is great, you are a great artist, but your art is false. Who on earth is going to say you are a great artist, but your art is false? No, you will say somebody is a great artist and qualify him as Janmadhyasya Yataha only if his art, which is the created universe, is actually there. And that is exactly what Bhagavatam says. Janmadhyasya yato anvayad itara tattesha bignaha swarat tere brahma hrudayadi kavaye muhyanti yat surayaha tejo vari mrudam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo mrusha damna svena sada. Note this word. Nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimai. Okay. So when you look at all these words, when you look at all these evidences from the Puranas, from the Vedas, from the Gita and so on, I am amazed that there are certain folks out there who actually think this world is an illusion or a mithya. Yeah, it is very unfortunate. But the spirit of Svayambu Manu is very different. The Vedas celebrate this Brahman as Vishwakarma. Vishnu Sahasranama defines Vishnu as Satya Karma. Okay. If he is Vishnu Karma and Satya Karma, the creator of the stupendous real universe creates a real universe. Okay. And again in Dwadasha Stotra, Acharya says, Bahuchitra Jagad, Bahuda Karanat, Parashaktihi, Ananta Gunaha Paramaha. When you see this beautiful, intricate universe of the external world, and for some of us who are physicians, when you see this intricate pindanda and this intricate body, that how it works, now you cannot but be amazed as to how great this creator has to be, and that this creator has to be an entity with infinite auspicious attributes and no defects whatsoever. So when you look at the universe, and when you understand that the universe is real, then you understand the greatness of Brahman. And then you understand why is it that Vedavyasa actually said Janmadhyasya Yataha. So certainly the language of Svayambu Manu is very, very clear when he says Yata Tatyato Arthan Vyadadat Shashvatibhyah Samabhyah. Okay, so we may be able to do this for 2 minutes. The reason why I am saying all this is, as I said before, everywhere in the Upanishads, there is a discussion of the creation. And we have seen that the discussion of creation has been very intricately dealt with. It is not just saying, passing, saying, oh, Brahman created the universe, full stop. No, the Upanishads go to great detail and explain the processes of creation. We have done this in the creation verse, right? When we look at Srimad Bhagavatam, the 9 stages of creation. We looked at the Nasadiya Sukta, how the pre-creation stage was and how to properly interpret this. Okay, and then understand how deep the philosophy is. Yeah. So when he says yato va imani bhutani jadanti yena jatani jivanti yat prayanti abhisham vishanti tad vijijnasasva tad brahmeti. That's what Taittiriya says. And Mundaka, we have sung this, and he talks about the various types of creation. How does this creation come about? Efficient cause, no partiality and cruelty. It is a spontaneous act. So look at all those verses from the Upanishad. Yata urnanabhihi srujate gruhnate cha. Yata prithivyaam oshadayaha sambhavati. Yata sataha purushat keshalomani. Tata aksharat sambhavati iha vishwam. Yeah. And the same Mandukya Upanishad, we have done this verse in Mandukya Upanishad that gives you 4 views of creation and 3 reasons for creation. And then there is one view which the Upanishad actually refutes. Swapnamaya sarupeti srishtir anyer vikalpitaha. Vikalpita means it's a wrong notion. It is a wrong notion to think that this creation is an illusion, is what Mandukya Upanishad says. So wherever you look at the Upanishads, they not only talk about the details of creation. If this was an illusion, there is no need to talk about the details of the creation. Why Mahat Tattva, why Ahankara Tattva, what are the 3 components of Ahankara Tattva, how they become Tanmatras, Tanmatras then become Panchabhutas, and then all the Indriyas and so on. So there is no need to discuss all this. You can just say this world is an illusion, mate, just get on with it. Okay. So you need to look at all this. So it's a lot to think about here. And what I want to do is this particular verse, Yata Tatyato Arthan Shashvatibhyah Samabhyah, actually opens up a great deal of philosophy. And our Vedanta Darshana, as you know, the 6th school, and the guru is Vedavyasa. And over the last 2000 years, 3 schools have evolved from it. Advaita, Visishtadvaita, and Tattvavada or Dvaita. 3 schools of Vedanta Darshana have evolved from this. One school claims that this is all a superimposition, and it's a vivarsa, and it's an unreality of the created universe. There are 2 schools of Vedanta which categorically say the created universe is a fully real. It's a reality of the created universe. They have different ways of looking how this potter makes the universe. It can be abhinna nimitta upadana karana of Vishishta Advaita or nimitta karana of Dvaita. Yeah. How do we handle this? How do we reconcile all this? When Svayambu or Manu has said Yata Tatyaha, but in Vedanta Darshana, there are these kind of schools that have evolved. And we as seekers and seers who are on this journey of souls where we want to cross over the Viraja Nadi and transfer ourselves to the non-material plane at some point in our careers, how are we going to navigate this? Okay, so this is what I want to talk about in the next class. The reason being, in the next section, Svayambu Manu is actually talking something that is very, very important, and not many of us actually think about this. So he says, Yata Tatyato, but there are some folks who say Jagan Mithya. Okay. Why is this relevant or important to understand? Svayambu Manu says, because there are consequences to wrong upasana. So that is where this chapter, this 3rd kanda is heading at. Andatamaha pravishanti e avidyayam upasate tato bhuya ivate tamo yavu vidyaya rataha, and it goes on for 6 verses. So we need to not only understand what is true knowledge, but we also need to have the knowledge of what is wrong knowledge. So all these things become important. And of course, based on our own swabhavas as souls, whatever our swabhava is, we take some philosophies as true knowledge and discard other philosophies. And we take some other philosophies as true and discard the other philosophies. So it is all based on our own swabhava. But Svayambu Manu is very clearly instructing us in the next 6 verses, having that knowledge is very important, mate. That's what he's saying. If you, for your journey of souls, you need true knowledge, and at the same time, you also need to have a true knowledge of what is wrong knowledge. So that means what is the Purva Paksha, what is the Siddhanta. So you need to get this. Only when you do dissection of this, then you can have proper manana. So if you remember that verse of Yagnavalkya, Atma va are drashtavyaha, shrotavyo, mantavyo, nitidyasitavyaha. So that manana component that comes in involves all this. What is true knowledge, what is wrong knowledge, and etc. So what I propose to do is, because we have done this kind of stuff for 3 years, I think the time is right to actually, maybe I may be a little bit ambitious here, but I just want to go to hardcore philosophy. We have not done hardcore philosophy in this section, in this forum. So maybe next week, if you could allow me, I want to take up this idea of Jagan Mithya versus Yata Tatyato Arthan. Yeah, how do we look at this? There are all sorts of discussions about universe. What is the nature of it? What is the philosophy behind this? What are the polemics on various schools? So let us look at that as an example, so that in the subsequent class that can lead us on to understanding wrong knowledge and right knowledge, and what are the consequences and so on. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to close today's session, and just a quick announcement to make. On the 21st, which is in about 2 weeks' time, Suresh Kankanwadi from Ahmedabad, he is going to lead on chapter 18. And he's going to do part A of chapter 18. And then what we will do is, following that, we'll do part B of chapter 18. And hopefully at that time, we'll also finish our Isha Upanishad, which is the 18th verse. So we'll kind of synchronize these both and then close Ishavasya Upanishad maybe in about a month and a half or 2. Okay, so on that note, Krishna Pranamastu, and we can take any questions if there are.
Madhu, this is Harish.
Yeah.
I did have one question. So the first verse in Bhagavatam, comes up many times, and I know the second half of that shloka, there is the word kuhakam. So if you can explain the context of that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is what it is. Okay, so let us, to understand this kuhakam, Harish, can I just do the first half of this this line?
Sure.
Tejo vari mrudam. Yeah. So there is teja, there is vari, and there is mruda. So what that talks about is Brahman, matter, and jivas. Each of the component of the universe has a type of creation. Okay. Tejaha actually means Brahman, who takes various avatars. That is his creation. Yeah, that is his type of creation. Is he takes various avatars, Vyuha, Mula, and so on. And then Vari means jivas, which are the reflections of Brahman. Vari means water. Water, you have a reflection. And so the Bimba Pratibimba ideas. So the jivas take that form of creation. And then Mruda means earth, the gross matter. So that is another type of creation from gross matter. Yeah. These are the Vidimayo Yatra 3 Sargaha. So Sargaha, as you know, means creation. Okay. So 3 means 3. So these are the 3 types of creation that happens in all of existence. Okay. Sada Nirasta Kuhakam. Okay. Nirasta means never. Kuhakam means illusion. Okay. So this created universe is not an illusion. Nirasta means rejecting it. Kuhaka means illusion, that a magic. Yeah. So the literal meaning is, a magician does all this magic, right? So there are some schools they think that this whole created universe is a magic. It actually is an illusion. It does not exist. Okay. Whereas Veda Vyasa in Srimad Bhagavatam has actually rejected this. Nirasta Kuhakam. It is not a magic. Why? Satyam. There are 2 meanings for Satyam there. One is Satyam means it's real. And Satyam, as you know from Taittiriya Upanishad, that is also name of Paramatma, right? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Yeah. So because this universe is created by this Paramatma, and we bow to him, etc. So Kuhaka is the magician's magic is Kuhaka, Harish. I hope it makes sense.
No, that's very helpful, because some translation, as you can imagine, have completely flipped that meaning. So that was causing some confusion.
So what was the meaning, just of interest?
Let me open it up. I think it basically said that, let me open up that specific thing. Yeah, it says that this cosmic creation results from interaction of the 3 modes of nature, and the temporary manifestations are so created as to present an illusion of reality to to the bewildered mind of the conditioned soul. This is from the Prabhupada's one.
Thank you. Good luck to them. So the words are very clear from the Sanskrit and the way the words are placed and on all that. So yeah, Harish, everybody writes things based on the swabhava, right? Anadi kalato vittahi samayahi pravahataha. Various views, various philosophies have always been there eternally. Certain souls of certain predispositions find certain meanings helpful and they go to their destination, whatever the destination is. So we just leave it at that. So I'm just it's useful to have views from others as well. So again, when you say illusion, and I think it's a very, very nice way of taking it up next week, because Harish has introduced this idea, whether this is niratakokam, whether it is an illusion or not. So what we will take is, what is the logic by actually saying it's an illusion? Okay, so let us deal with this next week. So there is a whole lot of philosophy behind that. So just by saying the world is an illusion, the world does not become an illusion. Yeah. So you need to substantiate and give evidence to prove why the world is an illusion. Okay. So that is where the arguments, that is where the polemics and the philosophical beauty of Sanatana Dharma is, where you actually challenge that concept and ask for philosophical answers. Yeah. Is it based on pratyaksha that you're saying? Is it based on perceptual knowledge? You're saying the world is an illusion. Is this based on agamas or Vedic scriptures that you're saying this world is an illusion? Or is it because of an anumana or an inference or a logic you're saying this world is an illusion? Pratyaksha, anumana, and agama. Which ones are you basing to say the universe is an illusion? Because Svayambu Manu has a different view. So on what basis are you saying the world is an illusion? Okay. So we will deal, because those are all the only three modes of knowledge, right? Pratyaksha, anumana, and agama. And we need to handle this that way and then objectively look at it and then consider and make a considered assessment as to actually the world is an illusion or not. Okay. Even the quantum mechanics theory that was, the chaps who got the Nobel Prize last year, they have not proven the world is an illusion. There is some fake news that is going on out there in YouTube and elsewhere that some folks claim that these physicists have actually proven the illusory nature of the universe. Okay, that is fake news. They either do not know what that quantum physics is, or they just make grand statements without backing it up with evidence, which is not uncommon in the internet forums and others that I see. So what we will do, Harish, is we will handle this head on next week, and I'll take your Srimad Bhagavatam verse and then look at that Nirasta Kuhakam, and then we'll talk about this. So that's really interesting. Thank you, Harish. Any other questions?
No, that's
Yeah, Madhu, I think, whatever you just said about the illusion as well, one of the common thing is Adi Shankara is such a, knowledgeable person and whatever, yeah. So definitely the kind of illusion he was talking in the Advaita is not very much, it should be very much incomprehensible to our normal people, isn't it? The kind of illusion, what we say is illusion, is not what he talked about, because, such an intelligent person, he has written so much about so many other things. He has revived Hinduism, in the sort of wake of whatever, in the very short age. So he can't be that dumb, isn't it?
I agree with you, Sudarshan. That's why I said there is anadikalato samayabi pravahataha. These philosophies have always existed eternally, of different ways of looking at this. Yeah, these philosophies, the Advaita philosophy did not start with Shankaracharya. Yeah, Dvaita philosophy did not start with Madhvacharya, or Visishta Dvaita schools did not start with Ramanujacharya. These views have eternally been there. Okay, look at for example, we had a discussion. We were talking about Narasimha, Prahalada, and Hiranyakashipu. Okay, so their Hiranyakashipu and Prahalada, they are actually coming from two different schools. Prahalada is coming from I would say the realistic schools and say, Paramatma, I bow to you, you are great, I am small, I am nobody else. Whereas Hiranyakashipu said, I am Paramatma himself, why do you want to worship Narasimha? You worship me. Okay, so these philosophies have always been there, and God has made these philosophies. All these philosophies exist because Paramatma has made it so, right? Why has he made these philosophies? So that each soul, based on its nature, finds a destination that is appropriate for him. So that is where we leave that philosophy, and it is entirely up to individuals to understand what appeals to them. Yeah, so that is a key democracy. So this is why I like Sanatana Dharma's philosophy, because we are democracy in philosophy. So we accept all the schools and we will have these arguments. And I've also told you about an incident where Vedanta Desika of Visishtadvaita school is the judge for Akshobhya Tirtha and Vidyaranya. Akshobhya Tirtha of Dvaita and Vidyaranya of Advaita, and Vedanta Desika is the judge. And they talk about Tattvamasi. Okay, so this is our culture where we can have all these various views. We can agree and disagree, but we're not going to kill each other. It is just makes interesting philosophy and makes it very colorful, and we can decide which one is appealing to us. But nevertheless, the information needs to be out there. One of the challenges that I find is world is an illusion or a mithya. That idea seems to be much more pervasive than the counter argument, actually the world is real. How many folks here actually know the philosophical arguments for this side of the argument that the world is real? And how many of them actually know why Shankaracharya actually said the world is mithya? So we just grasp these terms and then we run with it. But actually to dig deep and understand what is it that the acharyas were talking about, and how does it appeals to me, and how can I make my direction? Because at the end of the day, we as souls, it's an important concept for us, isn't it? If I am thinking I am God, that is entirely different. But if I am thinking I am nobody, I am an atomic thing, but I need to worship the Supreme, get His grace, and I need to find my solution, it is another entirely different. There are two ends of a spectrum here. One saying I am God, the other one saying no, I am nobody, but I am a servant of a servant of a servant of God, and I need to go. So there are two diverse views, and these views are there so that each soul, that is where it comes to. Every soul is different, and we have our own attributes and our own way of looking at it. But the information needs to be presented so that those who find a particular view interesting will follow that route. But that information needs to be out there. So that is where I'm coming from. So I don't think we should never ever dismiss any of the schools of philosophies that is there in Vedanta Darshana, be it Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva Mimamsa, and even in Uttara Mimamsa, be it Dvaita, Advaita, Visishta Advaita, and then of course you have all other schools that have come, isn't it? Nimbarka, Vallabhacharya, Chaitanya, and so on. So we need to take everything into consideration. So that is one view. The other one is there is also a historical context in which Shankaracharya had to come up with a type of philosophy that would bring people from. So there was the Tathagata Mata. Yeah, Tathagata Mata was all pervasive in India. So Tathagata, as you know, is Buddhism. That was there before Shankaracharya's time. That is called Tathagata Mata. So from Tathagata, how do you bring it to Astika? And Shankaracharya had to use a technique and a mechanism to bring people back to the Vedic fold. And that is how his philosophy, that is somehow historians describe it as to how this philosophy has evolved over the last 2000 years. So it's a complex and it's a big subject. But I think the key there is that we actually celebrate all views of philosophy and we understand everything so that we make a choice. So what I have given is, I've taken a very evidence-based approach here. That is what I do in my profession. We do all the evidence basis. So we have taken evidence basis to talk about it. So we will use the same evidence base next week to try and compare and contrast how the various schools of philosophies actually look at the nature of the universe. Thanks, Sudarshan.
Thank you.
Excellent. So if there are no further questions, I'm going to ask Harish to recite Om and we close today's session. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next week. So do some background reading if you have time about Mithya and reality and all that for next week. So hopefully it will be an interactive session. Thank you very much. Take care and Hare Krishna.
Hare.